Hi, and welcome to this episode of The Courageous Choice. This week, we're really excited to welcome Ashish Kothari, the CEO of the Happiness Squad, to join us. Thanks so much for joining us today, Ashish.
It's my pleasure, Jamie. Thank you for having me.
We met earlier this year, and I was so inspired because you were sharing your journey and, quite frankly, just the name of your business, the Happiness Squad. I mean, who doesn't smile when you think about that? Um, and I'm really thrilled that you're going to be here and share a little bit about your journey and your story and what motivates you to be doing what you're doing today with all of our listeners. So thanks for joining us. Why don't you share a little bit of that journey with us now?
Yeah, would be my pleasure. Would be my pleasure. So, as as I was sharing with you, before I started Happiness Squad about now almost 3 years ago, it'll be 3 years in August. I actually spent about 17 years at McKinsey. I was a partner for the first 12 years doing most of my work around large scale operations transformations. And then the last 7 years, I focused on the topic of adaptability, resilience, well being, um, really doing deep research, client work around this topic. And, it came, Jamie, for me from a personal, like what shift, why you shift? How do you shift after 12 years of doing something and you're like so, senior in the firm? And completely change what you do, really, it actually started from my own personal bout with anxiety. I was waking up every morning anxious. I didn't know why, because everything was great. Everything externally was green lights. Uh, I was the work I was doing with clients was so impactful. I loved the firm. I loved my colleagues. Um, Everything was great. Family was great. Health was great. Um, And yet I was waking up with anxiety every morning and it would go away, in a couple of hours. But every morning I would be curled up in a ball. And I didn't know why. And I wasn't okay to actually start uh, taking the advice of others who said either go see a therapist or take a pill. This happens to people. You're getting to be 40. Who knows what's coming up for you? I'm like, there is nothing coming up for me. I don't know why this is. But anyway, I decided to kind of do my own research in the fields of spirituality, psychology, neurosciences. I went on a couple of retreats. And one of those retreats that was actually organized by the firm, it was with an external company called Mobius, changed my life. 18 months into my journey with battling anxiety, um, we were in Portugal at one of the oldest monasteries. And that week was transformative because I walked away with three big insights that literally became the arc of this journey that I'm on. The first was I realized that, when we think about who we are, we use all these roles and titles and ways of kind of labeling ourselves. But when we really, take away all of those, I like if I don't describe myself, if I ask you to describe yourself, said, don't use your name, your gender, your experience, where you live, your roles in life, like a mother and a daughter, etc., etc. Who are you? Who are you behind all of that? Right? For me, the answer that consistently kept coming up was my core essence was that of relationships and connections. It had been my through line my whole life. Move to keep in touch with people, connect people, support people, and just, if I could in any moment make a difference, even if it's connecting them to somebody else, it was always true for me. On the third day of the retreat, we were off devices, we were meditating, we were doing yoga, none of these things I'd done before, even though I'm Indian. We were eating healthy, no alcohol, um, spending time in nature, in connection. On the third day, I woke up with no anxiety. And for somebody who's woken up with anxiety for 18 months to have a day when it's not there is amazing. I still remember that day I woke up and I'm like, oh my God, my head doesn't hurt and my knees are not up to my neck. Right. Um, and I remember just looking out at this beautiful, the sun was rising. I walked out and I could still remember the wet moss on my feet. versus the usual wake up, oh my God, like all these emails have come out and you start running, right? I realized that this work was deeply transformative and had lots of impact because personally, I could see the impact that it had on me in even 3 days. And then I looked around and there were 30 to 40 other partners and senior partners, all unbelievably accomplished people, work hard, beautiful humans. And every one of them had perfect external lives, but struggling internally. With the same stories, just different versions, but of the same stories that I had. And it was that week and those three insights that gave me my why. I decided that I was going to spend my life researching, learning, practicing, and building something that allows happiness to be accessible to all, for people to flourish. That was it. I mean, I 12 years into the firm, I decided to completely change my tracks, my practices. I became a learner again versus a partner who's leading work and supporting others, integrated it. And along the way, I realized that, it wasn't that I was doing other work, but this work was actually the foundation of high performance. And I just lived into this old way. But anyway, that's the story. That really became so a lot of people, ask me like, and when I left, people say, wow, you were so courageous. And I always say it wasn't courage. It was my calling that set me free. Right. It was my calling. It was something that I just couldn't not do.
I got chills as you're telling your story in so many different points, honestly. It strikes me how many people, executives, successful to the outside world, are suffering or waking up with anxiety daily, that feeling. Um, the kind of comparable feeling that I had as you described that third day and walking with the moss under your feet is like the first you're wearing glasses, like the first day I got glasses or contacts and like you didn't know you couldn't see. And then you're like, look at those leaves, and you're it's like a new way of seeing, right? And once you see, you can't go back to not seeing,
No,
right?
no.
Um, so really, really striking on so many fronts, and pretty cool that you were able to switch even internally into kind of researching and getting more information. It says a lot about you that's like wanting to understand, right? Wanting to understand and to explore and to recognize that you weren't alone in that feeling. Um, how did you feel? Were you supported to kind of navigate that, or how did that conversation go? I'm curious.
Oh yeah. You look, I mean, when you are kind of, everybody's going zig and you're going zag, of course it doesn't come without difficulties, right? And for me, it was up till then. And by the way, I also over time realized why I was feeling anxiety. I was literally experiencing what Viktor Frankl in the 50s called a crisis of meaning. He said there are many people today who have the means to live, but no meaning to live for. And that was true for me. Like the work I was doing was highly impactful. It made all the difference to people out there. But a lot of my work was about cost savings and finding ways to help companies save money. And here I am, who like money's never had any meaning for me, ever. Right? I don't know what price of things cost. Not because I've like, oh my God, yeah, you have so much money, you don't care. No, I came to this country with $5,000 of a loan. I had nothing. Right? It's never had that effect. Every time I've changed jobs, and I changed 7 jobs before I got to McKinsey, money, roles, titles have had no meaning to me. Um, it's just not wired. So when you spend 12 years running around trying to save people money, working long hours, flying everywhere, that, what are you doing? It was my body and my body's wisdom that was revolting and showing up in form of this anxiety of like, you can't keep doing this. You are meant for more.
Mm, yeah, you're calling and being meant for more, and to hear that or to start to understand and conceive what that can mean. I think
Absolutely.
and how you help others by leaning into that. I mean, I'm excited to get to kind of the framework that, because so many people I think right now, and organizations, teams, and just individuals are really struggling with the compounded change, the internal and external factors that are affecting them, the pace of change in really all aspects of life, but certainly at work and technology and post COVID and all these kinds of things. And yet the tension around companies wanting more productivity and cost savings, and so these tensions are really hitting people hard. I know that's what you're helping people navigate in their work. Maybe share a little bit about how you're doing that.
Yeah. So look, I realized, and this was basically the reason I left, right? So my pivot in the firm was to do this work, and it was amazing. It was incredibly successful. When we hit COVID, Jamie, there was something else that became apparent to me. That even though I had quote unquote woke up, by the way, I'm still learning. I'm on my 690th book. I read a book and a half a week. I'm constantly learning.
That's unbelievable.
Um,
Do you post the books you read anywhere, like your reading list? Because people may want to know.
no, I will. We're just actually creating one on 10 books that changed my life. But I mean, literally, I'm reading, and I read from all over the place. But mostly around this topic of flourishing, anything or something around this. Um, but going back, I realized I was asked to actually build our firm's offering on this topic for clients because we knew that the change that was coming and hitting people was so big. That's when I actually realized that even though I had started doing all this work and changed my life and I was coaching so many others, there was a lie that I was living. I was blind to it. I had a story that stress and anxiety are prices insecure overachievers and leaders pay for success, for control, for fame, for money, what have you. That if you just want to live an ordinary life, you can actually lead an ordinary life. You don't need stress and anxiety. And when I started looking at the data, it blew my mind. And I realized how wrong I was. I realized that people in the not-profit world were more burnt out than those in for-profit. I realized that frontline workers were more burnt out, stressed, and anxious than senior executives. I found out that those who were teachers and doctors and therapists, these noble professions, were struggling more than private equity, venture capitalists, greedy consultants, whatever you want to call it. And here I was serving the top of the top at the firm, right? And I was like, they they have all the other resources. They can go to a therapist and take a pill. I don't need to wake them up. What I need to do is build something that actually reaches the masses. Because look, here's the reality of what we are living. This is how stark it is. Our ways of working today are fundamentally broken. They're not somewhat broken. They are fundamentally broken. And it's coming at a huge economic and human cost. Let me tell you the human cost first. Today, Oxford's work, 20% of people are thriving at work. 20%. 60% experience stress daily. People on the front line, only 19% find meaning at work. For 81%, it is just a way to earn a paycheck. And that itself for many is not enough. We're stuck on engagement levels of 20 to 30%, 20 years since Gallup runs the G12 survey, right? Loneliness is at an all-time high. Globally, 20%, 22% of people are actually burnt out. That is the cost we are paying from the way we work.
And it's exponential. You start looking at their families and kids and people they lead and everything else, right? I mean,
Massive, massive, right? And work is what we spend 90,000 hours, one third of our life. But even those numbers don't really capture it. The reality is between 20 to 60, you will spend majority of your waking hours in the week at work. So if you're struggling at work, if you're not thriving at work, how can you thrive in life? Right? How can you thrive in life? And the cost we pay as businesses is also massive. So it's not like, okay, you're doing this because we are doing something else and that work is kind of raising humanity. This poor work well-being costs us $12 trillion in global GDP loss. That's 10%. So if you're a company, you say, hey, how much does poor work well-being cost? Are my people doing okay or not? Take 10% of your revenue. That's the cost, potentially, of what you're leaving on the table.
Yeah, explain that though, right? It's got to be because people aren't finding purpose and meaning in it. They're not feeling connected to it. Just go
Exactly.
a
So
little bit.
there are
Yeah.
there are three big drivers. There are about five, but there are three big drivers of losses. And some of them are hard dollars, some of them are soft dollars. Attrition. It takes zero point 0.5 to 1.5x to replace a worker who's lost. Many of industries are facing 15, 20, 30% attrition. Go to any manufacturing, restaurant, hospital, those kind of jobs, give 20, 30% attrition, right? We were looking at these numbers right now for a client. I won't tell the name. They have 1,300 people who work at the company, 13,000 who work at a company, 13,000. 4,500 people leave every year. Do the math. If you pay them 50,000 and 4,000 people leave, that's a $200 million problem, right? That's assuming it's 1x. If it's 1.5x, it's 300,000. If it is less, you have the range. That's just the amount of cost to rehire and fill those roles. That doesn't even include the cost of the production line not running when somebody's out. At that level, there's a bunch of lines that probably can't run, right? The 12 trillion breaks down to approximately, 900 million on attrition, another 600, 900 on absenteeism. And then the biggest bucket, which is presenteeism or productivity losses. Why is that? That's like $9 billion. And because people don't measure it, we can't measure it, people get away with it. But we've built a model, Jamie, as you know, in our work, we actually can quantify that loss for people and identify the drivers. And those drivers are, do you find meaning at work? Or is it just a way to earn a paycheck? Are you energized, excited to show up Monday mornings? Or do you start counting down your hours till the end of Friday to arrive? Are you learning, growing individually and collectively? Are you adaptable? Number one skill, by the way, in World Economic Forum on what's needed right now with the pace of change. Number four, are you working with colleagues who you trust and more importantly, you belong, right? You feel psychologically safe. And five, most of the work we do is cognitive. Are you working in ways with deep work and frequent breaks that allow you to think and be at your cognitive best? Or are your calendars looking like a game of meeting bingo? Back-to-back meetings constantly running double, triple booked. These are the drivers where all the human energy is won or lost. And most companies don't look at these data the way they look at data on their physical assets.
Yeah. I think that that's really key, right? We spend so much time, on our strategic planning and building a strategy. And I just think flat out, you don't have a fully baked strategy if you don't know if your organization can deliver, right? And the can you deliver doesn't just mean do you have people in this positions, it's all the things you're talking about, their engagement, the culture, their adaptability, their ability to learn, they're bringing their discretionary effort, them feeling aligned and purposeful in the work, innovation, all the things, right? Um, well, I want to make sure that we get to some of the framework that you have because I can imagine we've just depressed whoever's listening to this, and now they want to know, okay, so what do we do about it? So, if you would, please share a little bit with us.
Yeah, so look, fundamentally, the differentiation for us and what we are building comes from a complete paradigm shift. So we have to first accept that our ways of working are broken, right? Not somewhat, but completely. So we say, what do you do about it? Many executives I know say, well, we're spending money on, our mental health spend has gone up. We're spending all this money. Let me tell you about our EAP programs. They're wonderful. People can take time off. We have therapists. And oh, by the way, have we told you about our benefits? Our benefit programs are amazing. We get gyms and meditation classes and amazing doctors. And, we give people vacation. We have 2 weeks of vacation, right? Like there's amazing employee benefits. That's the problem. So that's step number one. We have to fundamentally look at that and say, okay, if all of that is true and it's not working, why is it? Oh, by the way, we also do surveys, Jamie. Do you know we do once a year, we do engagement surveys and we ask and we take pulse. And then based on that, we really listen to our employees and then we drive these programs, right? We drive training programs, we do leadership programs, we do top executive leadership programs. We do all these things. We do all of this. It's amazing. And I say, okay, when you launch a digital transformation, when you launch a manufacturing transformation, when you decide to implement an SAP system, how frequently are you looking at data? Are things going right or wrong? And making corrections. Static energy strategies today, when the world is changing every day, every week, every month, is stupidity. So when you look at data 1 year old and take another 6 months to roll out a one-size-fits-all program, that's where the problem is. Most companies today are pursuing wellness. Those companies who are pursuing, many of them are not pursuing, but those who pursue, even those who pursue engagement and wellness and believe in their people, they're doing it as a benefit. They're not doing it as a strategy.
Ah, that's key.
Right?
Yeah.
Because what does it mean to pursue something as a strategy? Here's what it means. You look at data continuously to see is it working or not so you can make adjustments. You measure that metric for that strategy at the same level that you measure performance. If you're having performance dialogues on revenue, profits, costs, call center uptime, have the same on your people every month. As a strategy, you will then hold the people accountable. You will promote based on that. You will incentivize and bonus based on that. Right? Today, most teams' scorecards don't even have the health of the organization on it. Right? So, fun, you have to pursue it as a strategy. Multi-year. Today, most wellness benefits, and I've had so many conversations. Yeah, can you show me real time what the impact is? Can we see the impact in 4 months? Is that the question you ask when you spend $100 million implementing an SAP system or a HRIS system or a CRM system? Is that how you're writing your AI investments? Show me the impact right now. No.
And by the way, a system might actually implement faster than a person, workforce
Exactly.
change. Yeah.
Exactly. And so this notion of pursuing as a strategy means do your diligence, build your fact base on what poor work well-being is costing you. Look at external research, look at your personal research, and commit to that as a strategy. Weave it through the organization. Point number one. Point number two, measure continuously, and most importantly, just like you do with physical asset transformations. Let the team choose the intervention. One-size-fits-all interventions don't work. It won't work in plants. It doesn't work with fleets. It doesn't work with stores. It will not work with people. And yet we do one-size-fits-all programs. Right? Everybody's doing a purpose journey this year because that's the flavor of the year. People are busy, man. Like they don't have time to go do this, right? So I think that's number two. Number three, we have to think about, when I think about who runs these programs, right? If we are asking, most of the time, leaders delegate this authority to HR to run the program. And all of our poor HR colleagues, all they can do is run the program. Right? So our measure, and I've been in these environments, right? When I'm running a lean transformation and I'm taking somebody through a lean training, which by the way is led by operators, by plant managers, not random trainers. A month after training, you show up, and if I taught you 5S, I expect that to be implemented. In a retail store, if we said, here is a new planogram for the month, you better implement it. If I implement a new system and I train you, I expect you to use the system. If you keep running Excels, you're not going to have a job. right? That's the point. We enforce it. No, we implemented SAP. You will use the forecasting module of SAP. You will not forecast on your own in spreadsheets. Tell me one HR program, leadership training, where we go back and say, I trained you on this leadership behavior. It's 3 months. You're still not doing that behavior. That closed loop does not exist.
Oh, thank you. I said it's true for leadership of others and leadership of self,
Yes,
right?
those loops do not exist. So my whole point is focus on transformations, not trainings. Take small pieces and make sure the teams implement it. Give them the support to implement. Don't train them and then say, my job is done. 4.5 on 5, people found value for time. They said they will. No, go back and check that they did it. Right? So really pursue it as a transformation. And the last but not least, this is where AI can actually help us. Today, no matter what the topic is, you can learn the interventions and you can give every manager a toolkit with their teams to allow us to do that. And that's really what we are building. We're really building a new human operating system that provides the technology layer to enable every middle manager, every leader in the middle. Most of them, by the way, are overburdened, burnt out, disengaged, and frankly, highest gap in what we are asking them to do versus what they have, because we never train people on these skills. We are equipping them with this at their fingertips. So for those who are willing to lead in a higher, more human, more effective way, will have the resources to activate flourishing throughout. And if we do that, here's the size of the prize that we can unlock. Personally, managers have a bigger role than therapists in our mental health. Those who flourish at work also have families that flourish and communities that flourish. So there's a massive impact. But here's the real economic impact too. 2 to 3.5% higher alpha. That's what we can unlock. Over 10 years, that's a 20 to 35% higher shareholder value creation. But that only happens if we pursue flourishing as a strategy. Wellness as a benefit, Oxford study, 1,500 programs, zero ROI. We're just burning dollars. Just burning dollars has no impact.
Is it that the programs aren't valuable, or is it that we don't measure the implementation and utilization or integration?
They actually are not valuable. And I'll tell you why. Even if they measure, it won't change anything. How many times, Jamie, have you seen, hey, we have this amazing expert. I know somebody who paid $70,000 for Adam Grant to come and speak in one webinar, $70,000. Most of the people were multitasking while he was speaking. Why? Because they had so much work to do. Star power brought them in, but they were still doing their work because who's going to do that for them? Right? So we don't give people the space. And the reason I say most of them are irrelevant, maybe it'll help a small percentage of it, right? Look, some small percentage who need it, for them it is valuable. But as an overall investment, as a company, they're not. Researchers looked at gym memberships. You know what they found? Those we gave free gym memberships to, even if you didn't give them, they would show up to the gym. Everybody else, you can give the gym memberships and didn't go to the gym, they're not going to the gym. Those who meditate without calm and headspace, because all we need is our breath. Those who are not going to meditate, you can give them a personal coach who calls them, let's meditate. They're not going to meditate. Right? So the first is the gap is the following. This is research from McKinsey Health Institute, came out 2 years ago. And they really disaggregated drivers, they call demands and enablers that contribute to wellness, well-being, and to burnout. Here's why most of these programs don't work. Individual factors that are at the individual control, only account for 27% of well-being and 3% of burnout, which means 97% of the drivers that make somebody burn out are outside that individual's control. So when we send somebody off to a therapist because they burnt out, they had a breakdown, and then we bring back, but we don't change the way they work, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah. It's a systemic shift that needs
It's
to
a
happen.
systemic shift. We need to address organization, job, team, and individual. And it needs to work in coherence. By the way, here's the issue. The other side of the issue, right? So on one hand, we give it all to individual. The other side is individuals. And there are many people, many leaders along the way. They say, oh, have you heard this before, Jamie? Yeah, I don't know what to do. My senior leadership doesn't believe in this work. They don't invest. That's the pressure. That's the culture. That last layer of organization only has a 1 to 10% impact. That's the silver lining. That's the opportunity in this glass half full or glass half empty world. As a leader, as somebody who leads people, you have agency, you have control over 80 to 90% of your team's well-being. You control it. So don't blame senior management. Yes, they can be huge amplifiers because there are certain things that only the leadership team can do, like rethinking employee benefits, like going from credentialing to reskilling, to making some of these other programs available, to really invest and build succession plans and talent pipelines. Yes, many of these things need investment and only the top of the organization can do. But every leader, you might lead even a person of 3 people team. You can connect with your team and say, hey, Jamie, what are your aspirations in life? Where are you trying to grow? How can I help you get there through this job?
I love that. I think that what you've shared around really getting clear about, are you as an organization really willing to commit to this? What is the ROI? What are you willing to do to ensure and measure and continue to refine? What can we do as individual leaders, regardless of the size of our teams? I think these are all things that we can do. I'd love to hear if there's a story, or it can be a more general story, but to me, it strikes me that whoever, the leaders and the teams that you're working with that choose to really bring, for example, you into at a systemic level to adopt a new human operating system or people operating system, that's going to take courage, right? I can imagine them going to their board and they're like, what are you investing this in? What, you're going to disrupt, your organization to do what? Um, how do you articulate the courage that those leaders are are,
Yeah.
are
So look,
taking?
I mean, the number one is, we are, so we have 2 different ways in which you're activating it. But the first one I would say is it's a leader play, right? There, I think we are at a stage there are many leaders who are waking up because these systems are not working for them either. I've had 2 different situations where, CPG company procurement leader for North America brought us in because he basically said the organization and the kind of environment in which we're serving is so toxic. I want to support my people. I had somebody else who's at a bank did the same thing. The program we're running for them, is $60,000 that supports 130 people. They have it in their budget, right? And he's like, rather than teach people some random procurement thing, I'm going to actually help them be more human. I want you to help them build adaptability skills and we'll integrate them into our team rituals. So we took them through a program where all of us collectively built some micro practices every month, but they also talked about how we integrate them into team rituals. I'll give you a very simple example of that. Instead of constantly looking at the gap versus the target we need to hit a month, we're going to start with gains. We're going to start with a conversation on gains we've had. What have we achieved this week? What's something that brought you joy? Even if you don't have that conversation, hey, where do we find yourself from a +2 to -2? Fully energized versus depleted. Why is that important? It allows me to see what you're battling. I can maybe offline connect. Can I do something to help? But I can also give you grace in the moment, right? We start having conversations not about what we are achieving out there, but how we are doing. We start to enable a different dialogue. Hi, Jamie, how are you doing? Oh, I'm on a minus when. What's going on? Like, I'm back to back and it's never ending. Let's have a conversation. Why is you back to back? Oh, I have all of these people who are calling me and they need requests right away. You can have a coaching moment. One of our micro practices is this Eisenhower Matrix, urgent, important prioritization. Hey, are all those things urgent and important that you're answering at 11 p.m. in the night? No. So why are you answering them? Well, there's an expectation from the person who sent me that I'll get them back to them. Do you need my help as a leader to help reset that expectation? What if we set up some SLAs that says if it's this kind of request, you get an answer in 2 weeks. If it's this request, you get it in a week. Those dialogues are possible. We don't need somebody at the president of the bank to change. That's a function leader with their team, giving them the courage, giving them the encouragement to make a shift.
So
Sometimes
it
that's
feels
what
like
it takes,
yeah, I think I need to get you on my like weekly or every other week rotation so you can ask me that question. So,
right? It's simple things, gratitude. How do we recognize each other? It's tuning in, having a conversation. This is the other dialogue. I'll give you another example of an intervention. Any leader can run it. Any leader. You can run it yourself for $60. Go have everybody do a strengths assessment. If you can't do a strength assessment, go to VIA Character Strengths. It's free. Have everybody look at their strengths, their top 5 strengths, and have a conversation. What are your strengths? Play back to them when you've seen them use that strength. And now look at the job that the team does and say, which jobs are we collectively doing as a team that Jamie would actually be really good at, even though that might not be her job? And what is Jamie doing that doesn't use her strength that somebody else can do?
yep, I
Completely
love it.
changes the dynamic,
Totally. And we
right?
have that optionality. And I love that it doesn't have to be an enterprise level C-suite buy-in. We can make this change, at any level in an organization if we're willing to.
It requires us going to the world of your podcast. It requires us to be courageous. It requires us to recognize that despite all of our wiring that shows that happiness comes after success, that success and worthiness is based on the goals that you've achieved, we flip the script. We recognize worthiness for who you are, not what you do. We recognize from research that flourishing leads to success, not success leads to flourishing. That flourishing leads to health, not the other way around, right? We have to recognize that. And if we recognize the human, each one with their unique story, with their unique skills, nobody wakes up, Jamie, no one, from the laborer to the production worker to the manager to the executive. No one wakes up saying, how can I be useless today? How can I show up doing as little that I can today? Nobody wakes up that way. But we condition people to that because we create environments where people feel helpless. Marty Seligman coined this word, learned helplessness. That's what we are creating people. We are making them helpless because of systems of broken ways of working. If we ignite the human spirit, if we give a little bit of oxygen, we give a little bit of hope, we give a little bit of fire and comfort of love, we can change this. And the change will come one leader at a time. We cannot wait for large enterprises who are under capital markets, quarterly targets to change. It will not change. I am not holding my breath for those.
No, I'm not either, but I am all in on flipping the script. You are so inspiring, and I'm super grateful. Thank you so much for joining me today, Ashish. I wish we could talk all day.
It's my pleasure, Jamie. Thank you for having me. And listen, if people want to find out more, I post on my LinkedIn daily. These are interventions. Most of them are things you can implement without a single dollar. If you need help running a formal program, you can, of course, reach out to us on Happiness Squad. We have our podcast. that we have unbelievable guests as experts who are showing and giving their gifts and their research 20 plus years. I have nobody on my podcast who's not research backed, or a CEO who's made a change, or a leader who's made a change. So these are real practical ideas that you can get for free, because we need people to wake up, to be courageous, which is your podcast, and take action. Right? Business, Clay Christensen said this, Jamie. Business is the noblest profession because through that we have a chance to change the lives of thousands of people we lead.
100%.
And I just hope people take that inspiration today from this podcast and make one change. Make one change tomorrow. Show up, do one thing differently.
Oh, I would love to hear the changes that people start making, and maybe what you've sparked for people that are going to not only help themselves, but those in their lives. Thank you so much for being with us today. True pleasure and honor. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Jamie. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you on the next The Courageous Choice. Thank you for listening to The Courageous Choice. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star review to help get the word out about the podcast. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our future conversations. If you'd like to know more about gig talent, please visit gigtalentagency.com or email us at podcast@gigtalentagency.com. See you in the next episode.